So I have a little slide projection that you can just watch, and thankfully your wonderful sound man got it working because 5 minutes ago we didn't think it was. So these are mainly pictures. The beginning is from my own personal childhood in Africa, and then a few from my dad's trip to Chad a year and a half ago, and then some from the orphanage's website that I stole. So just a hello to everyone. There are a lot of faces that I recognize and names that I have forgotten, and I am sorry, but it is very good to be with you tonight. It's been a long time. I think I left here in 2001, 2002, maybe. It's been a while. So we were talking, and Mom said, well, I'm going to go first, and then whatever time I leave you, you could have, because Michelle had told us we had 40 minutes together. So during the night, I came up with the spiritual reason of why I should go first, because she's going to give a testimony, and I'm not really. But the truth of the matter is, I always cry when she talks. So Brenda, where's Brenda Cole? All right, can we just sit together and cry together tonight? Okay. So I really wanted to go first so that she could just talk, and I wouldn't have to worry about talking after her. So I was born in the Central African Republic. As you see up there, the Central African Republic is in the heart of Africa. So if you draw a line straight down, this is what my dad would always say every time we had furlough, so I have this memorized. A line straight down the middle this way and straight across this way where the two connect is the CAR. Back in the day, it was a very open country, very Protestant country, and we had many years of good service there. We left when I was 10 years old, and I have not been back. So it has been a very long time. In the intervening years, the country has declined greatly. In 2012 to 2014, they underwent basically what would be a civil war. They were very close to genocide. Things have declined rapidly and greatly. It is now the poorest country in the world. The average income is less than $600 a year. So you can imagine there's incredible poverty, and because of the war, there are a lot of orphans. And in, I believe it was 2008, the Lord burdened a man from Iowa who had a painting business, and it was very successful, to go do some research, and he actually bought some property that we had lived on in the Central African Republic. And in fact, one of the houses on this property is where my parents were living at the time that I was born. So he has purchased that property, and he has begun an orphanage. They house about 30 children in the orphanage, but they have also started a Christian school. And the school, they minister to about 450 children. So all the orphanages from the town attend free, and all of the students get a free lunch. They added a lunch program this year. So a lot of the kids go to school purely and simply because they get lunch. And it's a very, very primitive country. I'll be dealing with no electricity, except unless the generator works for a couple of hours in the evening, and no real running water. But I am very thankful. Over the past several years, the Lord has really burdened me to work with underprivileged people from really war-torn countries. And my desire has been really to go use my educational skills. I have 2 degrees in education and over 22 years of experience now, and be able to go and teach the people who are currently teaching the young people. And so when I called Carter Strand from this orphanage, I said, I don't want to go just on a glorified missions trip, make myself feel good. I really want to go somewhere where I'm needed. And he said, well, you're a godsend, because we've never had anyone go that speaks the language. And while I don't speak Sango, which is the tongue of the native people, I am bilingual in French and English, and anyone who's been to school in Africa will speak French. So it is their desire that I go in and even interview the staff and find out how things are really running, because up till now they've only been able to go through translators. And then I'll attend a week of school. I'll be there for their last week of school, and I'll be able to attend and have individual time with each of the teachers and then we will go into a teacher seminar. And his primary desire is that I teach them how to teach from a biblical perspective. It is a Christian school. Most of the teachers do have a post-high school degree. I say most, not all. But none of them have had a Christian education at all. So it's his desire that I would go in and do some training along that line, and really just to give them some professional development that they don't have the privilege of getting. We are opening up that week to the local Catholic school and the local public school. So it will afford me many opportunities to present the gospel and have one-on-one conversations, because all of these people will speak French. So I am very excited. I was very fearful of making that first phone call. I was fearful of being told no, but I was also fearful of being told yes, because once you get that yes, then it's kind of real. But the Lord just really burdens me that if I was going to do this, now is the time. And so I am very, very excited that God has opened up this door, and I don't know if it will turn into something I'll be able to do every summer. For right now, I'm only looking at this summer. But pray with me that the Lord would bring in the finances. Traveling to Africa is very expensive, and we can't buy our tickets too far ahead of time because of the political unrest in the country. So we have to wait till pretty close to our departure time. And also, my 23-year-old niece will be going for 2 weeks along with me. So pray with me that the Lord would also use this in her life to really give her some direction about what God would have her to do in the future and pursuing another degree possibly. Mostly, I'm thankful for the opportunity to go back to a country that I played in and minister to the people that are now adults that were children when I was there. The director of the Jonathan House for Orphans actually remembers my father. He said, "Oh, I remember him. He played the trombone, and he talked about his little white dog." And I said to Mom, "Did Dad ever have a little white dog? Like, I don't remember any stories about a little white dog." But apparently it was the story about the little white lamb that got lost and fell off the mountain. I don't know if any of you have heard that. So he did confuse lamb with dog. But it's exciting to go back and maybe meet some people that were blessed by my parents' ministry when they were there, and then be able to minister to those myself. So pray for health, pray for safety. Malaria is very rampant over there. I think it's the third killing disease in the country. So pray for that kind of safety, and that the Lord would just pave the way and open doors in that ministry. And thank you for listening to me, and I hope you enjoyed a few of those pictures. And now my mother will come.
Well, I think she almost made me cry. I'm really thankful to be here with you tonight. This church has a lot of special memories with it, because first of all, we came when Donna was teaching here, and that was fun to come to see where she was living. And also, the Allens are one of the very few supporting pastors that actually came to our home in France. And we had such a wonderful visit with their whole family. And so that brings back a lot of memories. And then the last time we were home on furlough was in 2009 for 6 months, and we came here for a missionary conference. And that conference was very special. We've never been to a missionary conference like it before, and it was just a special treat for us. In fact, my husband always told the story about going and getting a suit from the missions conference, and I think he wore that suit every single Sunday, and he was buried in that suit. So there are a lot of memories that are here. As you can imagine, this year I wrote, first and last, because the last year has definitely been full of firsts and lasts for me. And so I thought I would just share some of those things with you. When we were first married, on our honeymoon, we were accepted with Baptist Mid-Missions, and from that time until we said our last goodbye to my husband as we buried him here, our whole goal in life was serving the Lord and doing that on the mission field. We all know this verse, all things work together for good to them that love God. I think next to John 3:16 is probably the verse that we quote the most. Recently, a young single missionary in Wales was visiting us in Greenville, and she had been to the orphanages in, what's his name? I've forgotten it. George Mueller, George Mueller's orphanages, and they had just found a new quote by him, and she shared that quote with us. It says, in 1,000 trials, it is not 500 of them that work for the believer's good, but 999 and one besides. And that one besides has been what I have learned in this last year. The end of 2016, we started the first of the new year by having a surprise birthday party for my husband as he entered for the first time into the 70s. He turned 70 years old. It was a very special time, and he was very surprised because he thought we were having a New Year's Eve get together, but we were having a surprise birthday party. But one thing he always liked to do, his favorite thing I think almost, was every New Year's he would write out verses. He'd choose verses, he'd put them on little pieces of paper, and then everybody that came to the New Year's Eve program, he would give them a verse, let them choose a verse, and he encouraged them to use that verse throughout the next year and help it to be their verse for that year. Well, after he died, the children found this in a journal down in his office. His verse, apparently, had been Philippians 3:20 and 21. It says before he wrote this out that he personalized it for his own life. My homeland is in heaven, from which in 2017 I will wait expectantly the coming of Christ Jesus, my Lord, who will transform this sin-infected body of mine, rendering it like Christ's own glorified body by his own authority, which will subject everything under his own power. And I'm not sure how much he knew that verse was true when he wrote that. As I said, we left on our honeymoon. After our honeymoon, we went immediately and deputation and went to the mission field. And we went to the Central African Republic, as Donna said, and there, one by one, we added our children. There's 2, there's 3 with Donna Ruth, there's 4 with Timothy, who some of you might know, and then 5 with Johanna. So those first early years were all in the Central African Republic, and we loved that time there. And so that was another little apple on the cherry on the whatever it is, that the Lord gave us this year, because in January, Bob went back to Africa. So it was almost like it was a full circle, and he did what he'd done first, he went and did for the last time. He went back to Chad, and he wrote me and said, some things have not changed at all. They're just exactly the way they were when we were there some 30 years before. So the food, making of the food, the cooking, and all that, nothing had changed. But he did see one difference, and that was everybody is walking around with a cell phone. And this is how they charge them, because there's no electricity. So this lady has this little teeny shop, I don't know if you can tell, and those are all plug-ins, and she's plugging in all those cell phones. So people bring their cell phones there, they leave them, and pay a few centimes, and then come back and get their charged cell phones. So that's how you do it if you don't have electricity. But he loved it because there was still a hunger for the Word of God. He loved teaching the pastors. Our church was able to send out tithes for all the men, books. We bought theological books and sent them out, and it was just a real missions effort from our own little church in France. and it was really a highlight of his life. He came home so excited about the time that he had had there in Chad. And then, as the present that the church had given us was an overnight in a hotel on the Atlantic Ocean. And this hotel was only open the weekend of February 14th, Valentine's Day, and then it wasn't open until summer. So they had put us on for the 14th of February. I was really sick. I had pneumonia, and I was like, oh, I don't think we better go. But somehow the Lord just pushed us, and we decided, oh, we'll go. Even if we can't do anything, we'll go ahead and go now. And I'm so thankful because that was our last vacation together. Less than 10 days later, he was with the Lord. And you know how you wish for things? Well, I always wished that my 5 kids would be on the other side of the ocean in France with me at one time. And I got that wish, but it wasn't exactly how I wanted it to come about. But I'm thankful that all 5 of the children were able to come and to be with me. And as we buried their dad, well, we didn't bury him there, but as we had a service with so many people, I was just amazed at the people that came. Some from Toulouse and other places that just seemed to come out of the woodwork and came to celebrate the life that he had lived as a missionary there in France. And then as we came back to the States to have the entire family together as we did bury him and said our last goodbyes. But life went on, and I'm thankful that people just stepped up. I was so grateful that in the vacuum, leaders just stepped up. The young man here, Ji-Won, he helps with the teenagers, and he's just been he's only 20 years old, but he has just been such a blessing helping out. This young couple, he's Mexican, and they have taken over the student work, which is a big work in our church, working with the university students. And they stepped right in and took over and have made sure that that work kept going. And just seeing the fruit continue was such a blessing. The ladies took over and helped and did many of the things that I had done, and just were so thoughtful and helpful to me personally. And then Lala, who took over and basically tried to preach or line up preachers or whatever, he even had a baptism, which was a baptism in France is a big thing anyway, because you don't have that many. And it was kind of cute. I put it here beside Bob because he almost did exactly the same thing that his mentor had done. So to see that continue, they even had a little special ensemble, and we had our get-together reception outside in our yard. And I was able to, this year, spend some time with special missionary friends, some for the last time. The 2 on the right work in Bordeaux, so I see them a lot. The one on the left, her daughter, who has Down syndrome, all of a sudden was taken very deathly ill, and so we went down there to visit her. Whoops, not sure what happened. There. And to see Emily, and this will be the last time I see them too, because the Farrells can't leave Africa now until Emily goes to be with the Lord. So it was kind of a bittersweet thing. And then also the very first couple that came to work with us, we started the church in Bordeaux. Renee died when we were here in 2009. In fact, just before we came here for the missionary conference, Bob made a quick trip back to France because the husband had died, and he went back to France for the funeral. And then Marcelle has been with us ever since, and she died just very suddenly and unexpectedly. And that's quite the story of how Michael Cole and I went to look for a body that wasn't there, but I won't take time to tell you about it. But it was, anyway, it was like the end of another era because she was the last of the families that had actually been with us when we started the church. And I also had a first because I gave a testimony at that funeral. Also, one of the ministries we've had a lot of is just being an encouragement to other missionaries. And Thanksgiving Many families from Spain at different times have come up and had Thanksgiving with us and all the missionaries in the area. And so this last year I was able once again to have Thanksgiving for the last time with all those missionaries, and to have Christmas with my teenage girls there coming over and making cookies, and doing the missionary Christmas for the missionaries in the area too, once again at our home. And then having the family home for Christmas. It was kind of sad when we packed the Christmas things up to think, this is the last time Tim and Ruth can just jump down from Paris and I'll live so close to them. And then another blessing I've had this year is just friends. Sometimes you think you're all alone, but I was so grateful that I had friends. This lady came all the way from America just to spend 2 weeks with me, and others that came. This is a missionary in Africa. This is a supporting pastor. This is an old student that was with us years ago in the early 2000s, and she came down and she helped me with my famous paperwork. And then my sister went over with me and went back, so I didn't have to go alone. And then another blessing the Lord has given me especially is that all of the children except one have been able to come back and be with me again. And so that has just been a blessing. So to see 9 of your grandchildren standing in a field of colza in France is pretty exciting. So I know you've been waiting for this. This is, did I skip the picture? Oops, sorry, there we go. That's what you were waiting for. The Lord, this is my big answer to prayer. I had 2 really big prayer requests. One's not answered yet. I'll tell you about it in a minute. The first one was that the Lord would supply a pastor for the church, and that so the church could go on, and really someone that could understand the heart of the church and also the grief of the church that they were going through. And the September before he died, Bob had actually written to Michael and asked him about coming to Bordeaux to replace us when we retired. And he said, no. So, no, they prayed about it, and they had another offer, and actually we thought that might be better, so we just backed off. But God really worked in their lives and showed them that after Bob's death, things had changed. And so Michael and Liz and the children came down, and Michael has just really been a blessing to the church. He's exactly what the church needed, because the church knew him. He had been there for language study, so they already knew him, they already loved him, and just having that element that everything wasn't new, everything didn't have to change, was just so good for the church that had gone on for 9 months, really encouraging to see him do it, but they were tired and they needed a real leader. And so it's been really great having Michael and Liz there and seeing how they have even the children have jumped in and just been a real part of the church. And this is another girl that I put on this. These are my little prayer requests right here. This is Carly. Carly's from Australia, and Carly came to France to learn French, and then she was wanting to go to a mission field. Well, that fell through, and now the Lord has really laid it on her heart to come back and to help the Coles. And so today, which I think is already tomorrow in Australia, but her pastor was presenting it to her church to see if they would help support her to come back. And that would just be such a blessing for the Coles, because she's just a great girl, really loves the Lord, and she just would be such a help with the students. So pray that Carly will be able to come back. And then this is my second prayer request that I have that's not answered, but this is the owner of the house that we live in. I don't know if some of you remember we live on the church is on the first floor, and we live on the second floor of the building. And we have rented that building for 26 years, and the price has never gone up. You can't rent a little studio across the street for what we pay for our huge house. So it has just been a blessing to the church. But right now, This man is 94 years old, and we have been renting, and so there has to be a decision made. He has already signed it over to his son, who is not as agreeable with us. He won't even tell us what he's thinking. So the church needs to make a decision about if they're going to find another place or what they're going to do for a building. So it's a very big prayer request, and it involves me because I don't want to leave him in a lurch and say I'm moving and close up the house. So just pray about that. This is the Parutis. Pray that they'll be saved, because that's the most important thing. But also pray that somehow the Lord just works it out so that the church knows clearly if they'll be able to stay and buy that building or if they can find another place. And then this is just to remind us to pray for the students. We have an international student ministry, and this girl that's a cripple, she's in a wheelchair, she's handicapped. She comes every Sunday because she loves us, but she says she's an atheist. And so she's very dogmatic about that. But just pray that the Lord will work in her heart and others like her. We do have others like that come every week, but they just are not willing to give their lives to the Lord. So pray about us with that. And then the other girl that's serving her, a year ago I would have said she's our most faithful student. She loves the Lord. She's the best Sunday school teacher we've ever had. But she has decided that she's going to marry an unsaved boy, and she's basically just left us and doesn't have anything to do with us because of that. So pray for the student and the student work. It's the work that really is what sends people around the world. We have students. We have a former student who's a pastor's wife in Korea. We have others that are deacons in many countries, so pray for them. And then this I just put up here to remind us to pray for the people of France. The people of France many of them, had no idea about what Easter really is. Easter's coming up. They have no idea. This man is the brother of our neighbor. You remember that big garden next door to our house, that big, huge? This is his brother. They have not talked in over 25 years. And somehow my husband managed to be this go-between. And so this man still calls the house and wants to know how his brother's doing. He would like for his brother to talk to him, but they just have nothing to do with each other. But we went to visit them in their home. And for me, it was shocking, and I've lived in France for many years. But they had no idea what the Bible was. They had no idea who Jesus Christ was, what he'd done. They were just, the fact the son, he's like, is the Bible is that Protestant troop thing? You know, that's kind of what he said. So just pray for the people of France that the Lord will just work in their hearts. They need the Lord. That's the most important thing. That I just threw in. Those are my papers. If you've been praying for me, you've been praying that I get my papers. And I'm still working on it, but there's Timothy who helped me to get some of them going, and I was very thankful for that. And when I've been going through his things, I found in a journal from 1980 this thing that was written. I don't know if you can read it or not. It says, "Why am I on the mission field? Instead of being invested," I better read it here because I can't read it, "involved in some other career, because I want my life to be involved in something that will outlast me. I want my life to be involved in people and not things." And that was his prayer, and the Lord answered it. And that's my prayer now too, that the Lord will help me to continue with my life to be involved in people, no matter what is ahead. I don't know. I know I need to say that because everybody asks, what are you going to do? And at this point, I really have no definite plans. I will retire soon, and I'll come back to America, but a lot depends on the building and other things. So pray that the Lord helps me to have good health and to have his wisdom to do what he wants me to do And thank you so much for your faithful love and your faithful support and your faithful prayers throughout these many years.
Well, thank you, ladies. We definitely have some very specific things to be